In this video, we're going to be talking about cults and the language they use to indoctrinate and influence their followers. So if you're a bit of a culty gal, if you're interested in all things cultish, then this one is definitely for you. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the book Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. I'm going to be giving you a little review and a little overview of what the book's about, as well as just talking about cults a little bit in general and my fascination with them. Before we get into a couple of things to address, if I look really pale, because I can see I do look really pale in this video, it's because I am. So I bought this foundation from TikTok, but I bought the wrong shade and it's far too light and I look so pale, I look ill. I'm not ill, I'm just wearing the wrong colour foundation. The second thing is, I am pretty tired, so I'm going to be drinking my little caramel iced latte through this video, so grab yourself a little iced coffee or tea or drink of your choice and let's get into it. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to give you the definition of the word cult. I've got my laptop here, because I think the word cult gets a kind of bad rap, okay, and it's kind of thrown about and it's kind of thought of as this bad word, and I don't necessarily agree with that. So here is the definition of the word cult that I found on the internet. So, a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object, i.e. the cult of Scientology, or you could pretty much put any religion in there. And then the second definition was a person or thing that is popular or fashionable among a particular group or section of society, i.e. the cult of Taylor Swift, the cult of the diet industry, the cult of marathon runners. You can basically put like pretty much any celebrity or like fad diet or trend in there. So yeah, I just wanted to start off with that because I do feel like the word cult is thrown about to describe something that is inherently bad. Like, oh, that's a bit of a cult, oh, that's a bit culty. But in my opinion, cults are not always bad, okay? I think when we think of cults, we think of the really bad ones like Jonestown or Heaven's Gate that have ended, or Waco, that have ended in mass casualties. And obviously that there's a reason we think of those things first, because they stick out in our mind because they're so horrific and sad, and I get that. However, there are other examples of what we would still consider to be a cult that actually do good in the world, or at the very least are pretty harmless. Like, for example, you could argue that the cult of Taylor Swift, okay, she definitely has a cult following. Is it really that harmful to love Taylor Swift? Is it really that harmful to sing Wildest Dreams with your whole heart in the kitchen while you make dinner? I don't think so. Anyway, we won't go into all that. I just wanted to quickly clarify that cult is not always a bad word. So let's get into the book. So this is Cultish, Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. I absolutely love the cover, by the way. Just give you a wee close-up of it. Love the design, love the little UFO. It's very cute. I actually discovered Amanda Montell by listening to the Sounds Like a Cult podcast, which she co-hosts with comedian Issa Medina. And in that podcast, they talk about fringy groups that could be considered cults and decide how culty or not they are. So definitely recommend listening if you haven't already. But a bit about Amanda Montell. So she is a writer and language scholar. She's from Baltimore in the US of A. And as I said, she co-hosts a podcast with Issa Medina called Sounds Like a Cult. This is actually her second book. Her first was called Word Slut, a feminist guide to taking back the English language, which I think I'm probably going to read next because that sounds right up my street. So what is this book about? It is about cults, and specifically the language they use to indoctrinate and influence their followers. Amanda actually coins the term cultish to refer to the language that cults use. So it could be considered another form of, like, we speak English. If you're in Sweden, they speak Swedish. If you're in a cult, you speak cultish. And I think one of the main ways that we can identify a cult is by identifying a culty sounding language, right? Without language, there really are no cults, and that is such an interesting concept because us as humans, we're so desperate to feel like we belong somewhere, and having our own little language makes us feel special and makes us feel more a part of something. We want to be a part of a community. We want to feel like we have a higher purpose, right? We're always searching for something that we can be a part of. So if we can adopt a special way of communication that only those in the know understand, that makes us feel really special and makes us feel like we're a part of something important, or at least a part of something bigger than ourselves. One thing that Amanda Montell touched on in this book is how language is the first thing that we adopt and the last thing to leave us. And I've noticed this as a millennial, right? For example, I adopt all these like Gen Z phrases, all these new phrases that come out. I don't think I do that consciously. I think subconsciously I do it because I'm like, well, that's what the kids are saying these days and that must be in, that's what's in, but also probably because I want to feel accepted, maybe because I don't want to feel like I'm getting old. I still want to feel like like I know what's happening and relevant and current. So I've definitely noticed that in my own life. Language is an easy thing to adopt, right? There's no real cost to us adopting a new word or phrase into our vocabulary. It's very, very easy. However, you might have noticed if you start to adopt a new phrase or sentence into your everyday speech, that's actually really hard to get rid of it. Once that word is in there, you're using it for everything. You're using it all the time. You're using it without thinking about it. How many of us say, oh my God, like 200 times a day? Or like, I say like all the time. And I've done that since I was a teenager, and I don't know if that's ever going to leave me because it's so ingrained within me, and therein really lies the power of language. It is insidious, it seeps into our subconscious, and over time, whatever we're constantly repeating over and over again is what we start to believe and how we start to live. So it's really, really powerful. People often underestimate the power of language, and I think this book does a great job at reminding us that it's very important and it's not to be underestimated. Cults are really good at manipulating our language. They often use maybe sort of like inspirational little quotes, Bible verses, or whatever verses of whatever religious text that they might be following, or even just quotes from their like leader. And over time, as I said, the more and more you say these things, they just become second nature, and before you know it, you're spitting them out verbatim to someone else and trying to get them influenced and get them following. Another really powerful thing that language can do is create an us versus them mentality, and this is a really important thing to have if you want to start your own little cult. Not that I'm trying to give people ideas here, but if you create an us versus them mentality, this is really, really powerful, because if you start to label yourselves as, okay, well, we're someone inside the cult. So say for example, I'm a Swiftie, right? I like Taylor Swift. So I'm a Swiftie, and you know, only the Swifties get it. Like, we know what these verses mean. We know who she's referring to when she sings that song. And if you're not a Swiftie, then you just don't get it. And see what I'm doing there? It creates a divide, okay? That's a very innocent example. But cults do that on a much bigger scale, where it's like, if you're in the cult, then you're in the know, you're on the inside. We're a family, right? That's another kind of red flag. And I used to hear this a lot in workplaces as well. We're a family, we're more like a little family. And whilst that can be well-meaning and well-intended, and I know I've definitely said that before and I've meant it coming from a good place, it can be a little bit culty, because it implies that the doors are closed, that we're all in the know, we're all special, we've got our own little language and our own little in-jokes, and everyone outside of us just doesn't get it, and they're wrong, and they're like not as good as us, they're not as enlightened or special, as important as us, right? So simple and yet so effective. Thought terminating cliches are another really good example of how language can be used to indoctrinate people. A thought terminating cliche is basically a little phrase that doesn't really mean much, and it's repeated over and over again, and it basically shuts down conversation. So Donald Trump is really good at the thought terminating cliche, because whenever he is confronted about something, he just says, fake news. That's fake news. That's thought terminating cliche. You can't really argue with it, right? Or you can try, but he's not going to listen. It's just like a little phrase that him and his followers can shout out when basically they don't agree with whatever they're being confronted with. When they don't want to have the conversation, they don't want to deal with it, it's fake news. Talking about Donald Trump really riled me up there. I just need a little coffee break. So a really interesting question that this book brought up is, why are we so attracted to cults? Humans are social creatures, right? We like to feel part of the group, and that's evolutionary as well. You know, when we were hunter-gatherers, we had to hunt and sleep in groups and communities to literally survive, so that we didn't get picked off and eaten or killed by an animal or someone. We long to be in groups of like-minded people and given a purpose. When we're all in a group of like-minded people, it becomes a bit of an echo chamber, so our own thoughts are kind of bounced back to us, and we feel very validated, and we feel like our very existence is confirmed because everyone else that we're in this group with agrees with us, and that's a pretty good feeling, right? Amanda Montell in this book says that we are cultish by design, and I would have to say I kind of agree with that. And especially in today's society, we are completely paralysed by choice. There are so many decisions that we have to make every single day. What we're going to wear, what we're going to eat, who we're going to speak to, what social media apps we're going to go on, are we going to post something, are we going to dye our hair, are we going to, you know, jump on that new fitness trend, are we going to buy that new tracksuit, are we going to buy that foundation that's too pale? You know, there's so many choices that we have every single day, and that leads us to be paralysed by choice. Whereas if we follow a group, if we follow a religion, if we follow a way of being, if we follow a celebrity, we can just give all that power over. We can give all that power over and just do whatever Kim Kardashian says, right? or whatever Taylor Swift says, or whatever God says. We can give all that power and decision making over to someone else and just live however they tell us. And that honestly feels pretty good because we have too much choice, okay? And it is paralysing and it is overwhelming. So if we can just sit back submissively and listen to someone else tell us what to do and how to live our lives and not have to think about it, that sounds pretty good to us. So I spoke about this right at the start of the video, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into why the word cult is seen as such a bad and scary word. So the word cult originally meant homage paid to divinity. Cult only gained a really scary reputation after the Manson family killings of 1969 and then the Jonestown massacre of 1978, in which 900 people died. I always forget that number is so high. So yeah, we had the Manson family killings in 69, Jonestown in 78, that's obviously not that long in between. So after basically the 70s, we had this really scary connotation with the word cult. And I also find it interesting that America seems to be so culty. Like, I know there are cults over here, I know there are cults everywhere, but you Americans love your cults. Like, I was watching the Mile Higher podcast the other day and they did an episode about mega churches. I did not even realise mega churches were a thing. Like, you go to whole ass stadiums to watch a priest, a minister. I don't even know how it works. My mind was blown by mega churches. That's a cult right there. And that actually brings me nicely on to another key aspect of a cult, is they tend to have a very charismatic leader. Think Jim Jones, think Donald Trump, think Adolf Hitler. At the front of most cults, you do tend to have this very charismatic, very confident orator and leader. That's what attracts people, okay? We love someone that's a good speaker. Like, there's a quote about Adolf Hitler and I cannot remember where it even comes from. It's in a book or in a movie and they're watching Adolf Hitler speak and someone says, oh, what's he talking about? And the other person says, I don't know, but he's saying it very well. And I think that's such a good depiction of the power of someone's speech and the power of someone's conviction behind their speech. Even if you don't necessarily believe what someone's saying right off the bat, if someone says something with enough passion and enough conviction and power, you're going to be mesmerised by them. Like, that's just fact. And all the people I've just mentioned are like white men, but there are definitely female cult leaders. Teal Swan is a very controversial female cult leader. She leads she's like a spiritual self-help influencer, but also kind of like encourages people to take their own lives. So problematic AF. But there are lots of other female led cult leaders. It just seems to be that the really big notorious ones tend to be the men. Just saying. Possibly my favourite section of the book was the section where Amanda Montell spoke about MLMs, also known as multi-level marketing companies, also known as pyramid schemes. I am obsessed with MLMs. I could consume MLM content all day, every day. I find them endlessly fascinating. They really frustrate me. I don't understand how they're still able to be a thing in this day and age, but there we go. I'm not going to deep dive into MLMs, but you probably have heard of one. I think the popular ones here in the UK tend to be Arbonne, the skincare. I think maybe they also do makeup. It's definitely skincare. Other ones used to be Herbalife. That was a big MLM over here as well. In America, I know you have different ones like Amway, LuLaRoe. Basically, an MLM is a multi-level marketing scheme where the people at the very top make the most money, but they make their money from all the people underneath, their downline. All the people underneath them are how they make the money at the top. If you made it into a diagram, it is shaped like a little pyramid. So yeah, that's why they get the name pyramid scheme, because the person at the top is making a lot of money and basically you're making less and less and less the further you trickle down. The people at the bottom are not making very much at all. I think there was a statistic and it was like 80% of people that, it might even be higher than that, but it was at least 80% of people that enter into MLMs don't make any money and in fact lose money. Anyway, not going to dive into that right now, but I think the cultiest thing about MLMs is that the people that promote the product or try to recruit you never use the company name. And this is a little bit of a story time, right? Let me just grab my coffee. I was once contacted by this woman, I think it was Facebook Messenger or maybe Instagram, can't remember. Anyway, I'd been posting a lot of like vegan content, I think at the time, and I was contacted by this woman and she was like chatting to me about like vegan stuff and all that kind of thing. I'm not even going to word it as cleverly as she worded it, right? But she basically said, you know, she's working with this vegan skincare brand and she thinks her products are really great and would I like to meet up and like try them out? She'll give me free samples, see what I think of them. And In my little young naive, I think I was like 21, 22-year-old mind, I was like, oh, that sounds fun, let's do that. So I went for a coffee with this woman and she pulled out an Arbonne skincare sample set, right? And I was like, no. Because I knew what Arbonne was, right? I don't think I knew it was a pyramid scheme or an MLM, but I definitely knew what it was. I knew it was hella expensive. So even if I did absolutely love the products and they were the best things in sliced bread, I don't know where I was getting the money at that point to buy them. I had the coffee with her. She was like really nice. She gave me the pack, sent me off home, and I was like, oh well, like, whatever, that was a little bit shady. She didn't use the company name because she knew I probably wouldn't have came if she said she was an Arbonne lady. So I went home, used the products. They were actually great, okay, I'm not gonna lie. I thought they were really, really good. But she then contacted me to like follow up, ask if I liked the products, and I said, yeah, they're really good. And she was like, you know, I think you'd be great at selling them. I think you could really, like, I think you've got a good platform. I think you'd be really ideal to like sell these products. And I was like, well, the thing is, as much as I like the products, I'm not interested in selling them. I honestly couldn't promote anything like that because I think they're too expensive, to be perfectly honest. And I said this to her, I was like, for me personally at that moment in time, they were too expensive, and therefore I would feel a bit guilty at like promoting products that I felt like were too expensive. Like that didn't sit right with me. So I was like, no thanks. And she really just kept coming back and kept coming back, and I was like, how many times did I tell you, like, no, I'm not interested? I think I eventually just had to delete and block her, honestly. I also got a voice note from a girl I went to high school with. When I say I went to high school with her, we weren't even like friends in high school. Like, we hung out kind of sometimes in the same crowd, but like we were literally not friends. I got a voice note from this girl. I hadn't spoken to her in about 10 years, and she voice notes me, and I don't even know if it was Arbonne, but it was one of these MLMs that she was trying to pitch to me, and I was just like, you are bold, and I will give you that. You are bold. These MLM girlies, and it's not always women, but a lot of the time it is, and there's a reason for that. I should probably just do a whole video on MLMs at this point. Anyway, you're bold, and I will say that, and I will commend you for that. And I get it, we're all just trying to hustle, we're all just trying to make a living, so I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody. It's not necessarily the people that I hate, it's the actual structure of the industry. I just think it's so backwards and wrong. So, but yeah, I digress. The language that MLMs use is interesting because they are mostly geared towards recruiting women. They use all this language like become a hashtag boss babe, which I hate that phrase so much. I hate it, it makes me cringe. Become a hashtag girl boss, be a mompreneur, all these kind of like really new age like feminist hashtags that they use. Billionaire mindset was a big one, hashtag billionaire mindset. It's all about your mindset. And this is the other really, really cult thing about MLMs, is that you're taught that if you fail at an MLM, it is your fault. You just didn't have the hashtag billionaire mindset. You just weren't hashtag girl bossing enough. And that's just so toxic, and I hate it. I hate it because the industry is literally set up for you to fail. It is literally set up where only the people at the top of that pyramid are going to really be successful and are really going to make money. Everyone else at the bottom is kind of screwed, and you're probably, if anything, going to invest a lot of money up front and never see it back. But yeah, that's your fault because you just didn't try hard enough, and I hate that so much. I have to stop talking about pyramid schemes because I'm getting too passionate. To round off, I really, really enjoyed this book. I think if you are into non-fiction, you'll love it, but equally I think if you're not into non-fiction, like if you don't read a lot of non-fiction, I actually think this is a really good place to start because it's really well written and it's really interesting. If you're into cults, you're just gonna eat this up, okay? You're gonna love it. I would give this book 4 stars. The only reason I would drop it a star is because there was a really big chunk of it about the fitness and diet industry, which I just didn't find as interesting. I just felt like it could have been shorter. Apart from that, absolutely loved it. Would highly recommend if you're interested in cults, or if you just want a good non-fiction read. Other things to check out are the Sounds Like a Cult podcast, really, really good. I also recently listened to a really good podcast by the BBC, and it was called A Very British Cult. It was mind-blowing. It was like a bit of British self-help cult, because I think the thing is, I do tend to forget that there are cults here in the UK. I always think about the big American ones and I think, oh, those crazy Americans. But it happens here too. And by the way, in this video, I hope I've not offended any Americans. If I have, it was totally not intentional, okay? I love you guys. It's just you do things on a really big scale and you get really passionate about things, which I think is beautiful, but I also think it can lead you to some culty places. But yeah, there's cults all over the world, so A Very British Cult, really, really good one to listen to if you're into that as well. And I think it's clear I'm going to have to do a whole video about multi-level marketing schemes. So yeah, please let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't read it, please let me know if you're intending to read it now. If you want more book reviews and bookish content, let me know. But if you want the whole video on MLMs, which I mean I think I've talked myself into doing at this point, then let me know down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. As they say on the podcast, stay culty, but not too culty.